Good evening, everyone. We'll get started here in just a couple of minutes. If you'd like to get refreshments, grab water or a snack, they're available at any time. The bathrooms are downstairs, or there's one at this level to the left. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. And those folks that have tuned in to Zoom, we have 16 people so far on Zoom this evening. I'm Sally Riley, and I'm privileged to be the City of Woodland Park Planning Director since 2007, and that was the year that Walmart was built. We're going to have some fun tonight. We will be taking opinion polls on various issues such as land use, growth, transportation, housing, parks, trails, and open space, and more. This is going to be an interactive session, so even those folks that are on Zoom will be able to submit their answers to questions, their opinions, and immediately the software will spit out the results and we'll see what the majority of the folks in this room or in Zoom think about these topics. Much has changed in Woodland Park during the past decade since the 2010 Comprehensive Plan was adopted. We have seen our housing supply grow with the development of the Trail Ridge Apartments, Valley View Apartments, the Clock Tower condominiums right over here. And we've also had expansion in the single family subdivisions, such as Stone Ridge and Paradise of Colorado. Commercial growth has also included a number of new buildings in town, including the Ent Credit Union, Woodland Hardware, Microtel, Natural Grocers, and Charis Bible College, to name a few. Public investments have also been made in the last 10 years. The long-awaited addition of Woodland Aquatic Center and the renovation of Memorial Park. So it's very important for us to plan for growth. Many of you may know or not know, Woodland Park has a limited water supply. And so our population today is a little less than 8,000. And our water supply can support a population of 12,600. So that means we are about 2/3 built out, and we have 1/3 yet to go. So it's very important that we grow responsibly. Your input is so important to us as we update our long-range plan. In 2010, the community identified many goals and objectives and action items. And I'm proud to respond that we have accomplished 85% of those action items from the comp plan a decade ago. So now it's time to update the goals, objectives, and actions. And we have 8 subcommittees that are working on the update, and they will be submitting their recommendations to Planning Commission. The Planning Commission will draft the final document, and then we will send that out to the public so that you can comment again on the final draft, and then there will be public hearings as well. So this is a very engaging process, and right now our website for the comprehensive plan has 3 questionnaires that you can complete after tonight, but this program is going to be recorded, so the results of the questions this evening you'll be able to go back and look and share with your family, friends, and neighbors. So thank you very much for being here. And I'm going to turn it over to our consultants from Logan Simpson. We have Jennifer Gardner here and Christy Bruce, who will be presenting and walking you through all the questions. At the end of the questions, we will have a Q&A section. So if you have questions as we're going through the slides, hold those until the end, and we will certainly try to answer them. But thank you again for being here, and I'll turn it over to Jennifer.
Great, thank you, Sally, and welcome everybody. This is a great turnout. We're very excited to have all of you here. As you all know from coming into the, you want it up higher? Am I just a little taller than Sally? So as you all know from the introduction coming in, we are going to be doing an interactive activity this evening. I'll walk you through that here in a moment. We'll do a test question. But the goals of the project, or of the meeting tonight, really are to introduce you to this project, to the purpose of the project, what a comprehensive plan is, what the land use code is, give you an opportunity to provide feedback on community improvement, and there'll be an opportunity at the end to show you where you can access the website, and stay tuned for future information or continued information. As Sally said, we will have a Q&A session at the end. So let me turn that slightly so I can see a little better. Awesome. All right, so to kick things off and test our Menti skills here on our phones, we have a question. What is your favorite ice cream flavor? And this is not a test, so you can answer whatever you'd like. But we just want to make sure everybody's phones are working and you can interact with the questions this evening.
It doesn't say all.
Oh, man. Isn't this fun, watching the results come in live time? And as Sally mentioned, we do have, I think, 22 or so attendees on Zoom that are also feeding into this at the same time. Oh, looks like chocolate's our front runner right now. Nobody likes bubblegum ice cream? All right, is it working for everyone? You all have a good access? Okay, fantastic.
The code is hidden.
Oh, the code is hidden. How does that go away?
I don't know.
There we go. All right, we'll give a couple more minutes for a couple more people. Thank you for joining us. Did you get logged into the Menti? Perfect. All right, chocolate's still the front runner. Guess we know our winner for this evening. Okay, are we good? All right, let's move on to the next slide. All right, so the purpose of this project, as we already mentioned earlier, is to update the Woodland Park Comprehensive Plan and to update the Woodland Park Zoning and Subdivision Regulations, otherwise known as the Land Use Code. And what those documents are. There we go. Okay, so what is a comprehensive plan? It's a local government blueprint for development, is essentially what it is. It's your community guided vision for growth and development. It's a tool for developing future process. And it's where we establish our goals and strategies that can help shape city budget and capital improvement projects. So it's kind of like your foundational guiding document for development within Woodland Park. And then the land use code, which relates directly to the comprehensive plan, is made up of your zoning regulations, which addresses zone districts and what can be built within each zone district. Your subdivision regulations, which address how the process by which you can subdivide land or divide up land. It includes standards and regulations to shape the built environment and the natural environment. And we're talking about things such as building height, building setbacks, landscape regulations, parking regulations. So you kind of get the picture there with what your zoning and subdivision regulations are. And that is really the primary tool to implement the comprehensive plan. So all those goals and strategies and action items that come out of the comprehensive plan need to be acted on. And the code, land use code, is the primary tool to implement that change and in the built environment. So why are we updating the comprehensive plan and code now? So typically you want to update your comprehensive plan roughly every 10 years as growth happens. And as Sally mentioned, a majority of the goals and strategies and objectives from the 2010 comprehensive plan have been achieved or partially achieved. So it's a great time to look at setting some new goals. As I said, the last plan was adopted in 2010, so it's been a little over 10 years. It's a good time to be doing this project. The land use code, as I said before, should reflect that comprehensive plan, so it's really great to do the two projects hand in hand. Although land use codes don't need a full comprehensive update more than every 20 or 30 years, so we're doing a little more of just a tune-up of the land use code to make sure it's in conformance with the comprehensive plan and the current goals of Woodland Park. Our process, we are in phase 2 now. Phase 1 included the initial community engagement plan, which set out our entire community engagement plan for the project. We started some stakeholder interviews in phase 1. We're continuing them right now, so into phase 2. We did start a plan audit in phase 1, and we are still continuing that. That's kind of something that crosses over a bit. And we always look at existing conditions and trends. So we want to look at demographic information, economic information, land use, zoning. We see those as the existing conditions of the city of Woodland Park. And then we build on those. That's kind of our background information that we're using to build our goals and objectives off of. So that'll be an ongoing process throughout. We build on those existing conditions as we go through the process. So phase 2 is really, this event this evening really kind of kicks off phase 2, which is our choices and opportunities. And we have been doing some subcommittee meetings, and those will continue throughout the process as well. Phase 3 will see the bulk of the drafting of the plan and the beginning of the land use code update process. So we'll start to merge the two processes together through phase 3. And then phase 4 will see the adoption of both documents. So here's where we get into a little bit more interactivity again with your phones on the Menti poll. We have a few questions at the beginning just to know a little bit about our audience, where you're from, where you work, and then we have a few other questions to ask about general improvements you'd like to see for Woodland Park. And then I will pass it over to Christy after that, and she's going to go into some specifics on 8 specific topics. So first, where do you live? And this is broken out by zones, so you can kind of assess which zone you're in. And the main reason we like to understand this information is to make sure we're getting a broad representation from the entire community. So if we notice one zone district is not as represented, we'd like to make sure that we're reaching out to community members in that neighborhood or zone area so that we're getting a broad representation. This is great. So it does look like we're a little light in area 5 right now. So this is great for us to know. Kind of fun. Oh, there we go. Okay, I think we can go to the next slide. And these results, as people continue to plug into this, when you get to the end of the evening, I think there's an option to download the results, so you can they'll get emailed to you when the presentation is complete. So now we want to know where you work. Do you work in the same zone district that you live? Do you work outside of the city? That's kind of what we would like to know with this. All right, just out of curiosity, show of hands, how many people live and work in the same quadrant of the map? Okay, so a few of you, great. All right. All right, now we'd like to know kind of our age representation. So what decade were you born in? It's kind of a simpler way of asking your age. So we are getting some decent representation. Obviously, there is a certain decade that we're getting more of. Couple decades that we're getting a little more of. And then what we do is we match these up to the demographics of the community. So we can see, you know, if the community demographics are matching this on kind of a flow chart, then we're probably reaching the right percentage of each demographic. If not, then we can say, okay, the 40-somethings are just not representing themselves. We got to get out there. So I am one of them. That's why I use that age. And we are clearly not representing on this map tonight. All right. I think we can go on to the next one. All right, so we do realize if any of you have been to What's Up Woodland Park, the new social media website, there is a question on there about what do you love about Woodland Park. We've gotten some responses on that, and it's a little bit more paragraph form. We'd like to find out today from you all a little bit more about what you love about Woodland Park. And if you could just type in, you know, 1, 2, up to 3 words, this is going to show up, as you can see, in a word cloud. As responses come in, if there's duplicate responses or similar responses, those words will get larger, and the ones that aren't as represented will stay smaller. Community. Scenery, mountains, beauty, nature. Independence shows up, it's getting a little bigger. Beauty, mountains is getting bigger. I just feel like an auctioneer. Nice. I can't read some of the smaller ones from here.
Weather, nice people, hiking trails.
Nice.
Sky.
Small town.
Unity.
Mountains is staying strong in the middle there. I noticed right before the meeting, the clouds kind of cleared and we could see Pikes Peak for the first time since we've been here this afternoon. Great, quiet, scenery, friendly.
I think 41 is about as many as it
What?
41 is about good.
Yeah, I think so.
Ready?
Go for it. All right, so now we've said what we love about Woodland Park. We're going to switch it up a little bit and say, what would you improve with Woodland Park? And this can be everything from parks and trails to transportation. You know, think about all the elements that are part of a comprehensive plan. Land uses, you know, do you want to see more commercial, less commercial, more of a certain type of residential? We're going to get into more details on all of that in a minute. So again, keep it to, you know, a couple of words or phrases that would say what the things that you really, really off the top of your head feel like need to be improved with Woodland Park. Great, good responses. Okay, traffic is growing. Feels disconnected. That's a good one. I'd like to poke a little bit more into that one, but I won't right now. We'll talk about that during the Q&A. Affordable housing. And as we mentioned earlier, we've been doing stakeholder interviews with members of the community over the last few weeks, and these responses are very much in alignment with what we're hearing from those meetings as well. So lots of little words I can't read from here. My eyes aren't that great. Vibrant downtown, public education. Reliever route, interesting. Are you guys having fun with this? Great.
All right.
All right, well, my time is up now. I'm going to pass the baton to Chrissy Bruce here, and she's going to go through some more specific questions on some of the topics.
I'm a little shorter than Jen and Sally. Good evening.
Closer to Mike.
I will, yes, thank you. Is that better? Okay. Yes, I'd like to reiterate what Sally and Jen said, where a comprehensive plan is much better when we get more voices and we get a clearer vision of the community. So I really want to thank you all again for coming out tonight. We really appreciate your attendance and your participation. So thank you. Yeah, so the next section, we'd like to dig in a little bit more. We have surveys on the website per theme coming out every month, but this kind of goes to get sort of a collective view in a town hall setting on some of those same themes. And all of these questions were pulled either from conversations that we had, things that came up in the subcommittees, or things that are in the existing comprehensive plan. So yes, we're going to be asking a series of questions that have a slider bar. So we can go to the first one here. So the first thing we're going to talk about is land use and then housing. So this is a pie chart of the existing zoning land use, except that we've taken out what's vacant and made that a piece of the pie, just to show you the element of the existing city limits that's currently vacant. So you can see that a little over 23% is currently vacant. And then, but the largest land use is single family residential. Then planned unit development, which is kind of a master planned area that has a combination of education, commercial, and residential. So on this next one, we're going to ask you to indicate your level of support for the following. On the left side, it says do not support. And on the right side, it says highly support. So if you don't support it, you can leave it where it is. But if you even feel neutral, please bring it to the middle. So the first one, and you can do these as I talk. Expanding the city boundary through annexation, more industrial zoned land, more commercially zoned land. Commercial, for anybody who doesn't know, is shops, restaurants, businesses, services. The next is more mixed use development, and that would be, within one area, a combination of housing, businesses, and maybe other uses. More high density residential development, that would be more units within a smaller area. Promote infill development. That's where you have a vacant lot or an area that could be developed within existing development and kind of identifying those locations and developing those. Usually in advance of or at the same time as developing areas outside the existing development area. And the last one is reviewing water use before a change in land use. I believe this is already done, but just understanding your support for taking into consideration water as a land use is updated. So a lot of support for that last one. And quite a bit of support for mixed use development. And less support for industrial zone land. Great. All right, I think we can move on to the next one. So next we wanted to ask, how should we grow? We understand that there's a lot of factors at play here, but if you had your druthers, how would you like to see Woodland Park grow? Slowly, kind of, with development happening at a slower pace, managed where it's, identifying certain areas that grow faster than others, or fast, which is seeing a lot of development really rapidly.
I think we have a pretty strong front runner here.
It does appear clear that managed growth is the front runner there.
All right.
Next.
Sometimes it doesn't.
I got the mouse there. It's easier.
Oh, yeah.
So next we wanted to talk a little bit about housing. When we're looking into the census, this is from the 2018 American Community Survey census, looks at the percentage of housing by type. And so single family there at the bottom represents about 80% of the housing units, followed by 2 units, which would be like a duplex or 2 condos next to each other. And then 10 to 20 units, an apartment complex being about a little under 5%. So with that in mind, again, we're gonna do that slider bar exercise. The first one is more multifamily housing, townhomes and apartments, more affordable or attainable housing, maintaining the historic older homes, and more accessory dwelling units, also called an ADU or a mother-in-law home, where you have another unit on the same lot. So a lot of support for the affordable or attainable housing and for protecting and maintaining historic and older homes. Great. So next we'd like to talk about character. In these conversations we've had with folks in the community, there's been a lot of discussion about what is Woodland Park? Who are we and who do we want to be? And a lot of that comes from kind of the character of the built environment. So there's a picture of downtown Woodland Park currently. And on this one, it's going to ask you to rank these themes or character styles, first being your favorite. And then as soon as you select that first one, it'll come up with another pop-up box asking you which one is your second favorite, all the way down to 5. So Mountain Western looks like it's a front runner. Oh, maybe rustic. As the votes are coming in here. Looks like maybe Victorian is the least popular. Not to say that you don't like that style, just that you don't identify that as being the primary character of Woodland Park. All right, great. Yeah, it looks like Mountain Western, which I have heard that to describe Woodland Park a lot. I think that's a neat way to describe the character, as most of those mountain corridors don't have as much of the Western style as Woodland Park does. All right, I know this is a little hard for the folks in the audience to see maybe, but this is a pie chart of the types of employment within the city limits. So it doesn't include any businesses that don't occur with their addresses directly in the city limits. So these are the jobs that Woodland Park currently has. The primary one is educational services, followed by accommodation and food services. So education would be, all professionals whose employment code is under the educational umbrella. And then accommodation and food services would be hotels, grocery stores, restaurants, all sorts of things like that. And then that's followed by hospital and healthcare. And then public administration, which would be, the Forest Service, admin buildings, things like that. So we'll go on to our question here. So in the economics and tourism, we're back to the style of support and do not support. Let us know, would you support promoting Woodland Park as a tourism destination? Support diversity of job types? Support reducing fees for commercial development? And should Woodland Park add an economic development employee? It's like support for diversity of job types and promoting Woodland Park as a tourism destination. Great, yeah, those are all pretty evenly matched. A little bit less support for reducing fees for commercial development. Great, yeah. All right, next I want to talk about art and history. Within our subcommittee, those two are linked. So we're talking about public art, art events, and historical preservation. And this obviously is a mural in downtown. So within this one, we'd really like to know your level of support to promote more public art, to increase city events. That could be concerts, 4th of July, things like that. More youth and teen attractions or activities. And Main Street and downtown improvements. So lots of support in this category. For city events and downtown improvements. And also for youth and teen attractions and public art. Great. I wonder if this will slow down a little. So for this one, we wanted to look at traffic and transportation, and that can include, the entire bubble of transportation from transit, cars, sidewalks, bike trails, those sort of things. We'll get into parks and trails in a little bit, but this statistic is also pulled from the census, and it says, only 570 people live and work in Woodland Park. So that's a little under 10%. And almost 2,000 people commute into Woodland Park. And that even counts if you live just outside the city limits and come in the city limits for work. And then 2,500 or so people commute out of Woodland Park for work. And again, if you commute just outside of Woodland Park, that still counts. So we think this one's going to be popular, but don't know yet. The US Highway 24 bypass reliever route. Adjustments to traffic signals to alleviate traffic. A regional commuter bus. And that could either go on 24 or, over to Cripple Creek. That could be in any direction. New roads to connect existing neighborhoods. And more bike paths and sidewalks. So lots of support from our bike paths, lots of support for the reliever route. A little bit less support for a regional bus or new roads that connect existing neighborhoods. Great.
Okay.
And next, we wanted to talk a little bit about sustainability. Within the existing comprehensive plan, sustainability is a bigger idea than just environmental. It talks about, if what kinds of things can be in place when, say, a global pandemic makes it so that, all services and things have to halt. What are the things that, can bring things back faster? So that can be environmental sustainability and ensuring that, the environment stays healthy and clean. It can be social sustainability, where you make sure that, people are taken care of and that systems continue to operate. Or economic sustainability, making sure that, there is a financial security in the town. So we would like you to please indicate your support for the following. The first is promoting water conservation. The second is promote alternative energy sources such as solar. Next is incorporate more electric vehicle charging stations. And the last one is support lowering the city debt. Lots of support for promoting water conservation. And lots of support for lowering the city debt. Great. Next, we wanted to talk a little bit about hazard and hazard mitigation. This is a screenshot of the Teller County Hazard Mitigation Plan. It was updated in 2013, and it addresses all the hazards throughout Teller County, including Woodland Park. It's getting lots of hearts. So first, we'd please like you to rate the city's response to the COVID-19 pandemic as a hazard from very bad to very good. It looks like good is taking the front and center. Great.
Uh-oh, neutral's climbing up there.
And next is neutral. And then we'd like you to rank the hazards from greatest threat in the community to the least. So this is similar to what you did with the character question, where we'd like you to indicate, what do you think is the first greatest threat, the biggest threat to Woodland Park? And then the second box will pop up. And it will allow you to choose which of the remaining answers for the following. And again, it doesn't mean that number 9 is not a threat. It just means you feel that it's not as great a threat as the other 8. Now, wildfire is in the top spot, followed by drought. We still have a lot of responses coming in. And wildfire is the greatest threat in the Teller County Hazard Mitigation Plan, which was updated in 2013, right after the Waldo Canyon fire for each community in Teller County. But in current times, it's good to know what the community thinks about other hazards. I believe the second greatest is not drought in the hazard mitigation plan. So that's good to understand that that's, what the folks here today think. Yeah.
I would recommend that you change that to things that we can actually do something about. Drought, we keep learning about that. Wildfire, we do like severe winter storms. That's all out of our We can't do that,
Sure.
so that would shorten this.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. For a lot of these, we look at a resiliency and how, when these things do occur, how do you bounce back? As
And
far as
Christy,
implementation.
we have a raised hand as well on Zoom from Larry Black.
Great. Is there a question there?
Larry, I just unmuted you. Do you have a question?
Maybe we can follow up in the chat, in the Q&A section.
Sounds great.
Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the next one. So next we wanted to talk about well-being. And well, we have a picture of the hospital here, a really cool picture with the helicopter taking off. But when we're talking about well-being, we're talking about community well-being as a whole. So that being education, health, wellness, recreation opportunities, and sort of that whole big bubble about balance and wellness. So for these, our questions are, what's your level of support for incorporated community gardens? We understand that they would need to have very tall fences for the deer. More clinics and hospital services. And an increase or emphasis in ADA compliance. For anybody who's unfamiliar with ADA, it's the American Disabilities Act. And so that would include things like ramps and easily maneuvering, downtown and being able to access all businesses for people with disabilities. So it's like a high rate in ADA compliance and closer to neutral for community gardens and clinics and hospitals. And then we just wanted to ask, while we had everyone here, how has your quality of life changed in Woodland Park? We know some of you have been here for a very long time and some are recent move to Woodland Park, but just getting a general gauge about, is your quality of life better or worse in the last few years? And again, 3 being neutral, so about the same. So 0.2 better than the same. Excellent. All right, next we wanted to talk a little bit about parks, trails, and open space. This graph looks at the parks, trails, and open space plan, and it indicates the number of existing miles in the solid color and the number of proposed miles in the dash color. So quite a bit of plans for sidewalks and quite a bit of existing dirt trail. And this is just within the city limits. That's a great question. An on-street trail would be a bike lane or a area right next to a street. Off-street is a trail that is completely separated from a street. It's paved, but is not adjacent to a street with cars. So then we'd like to ask you, for parks, trails, and open space, indicate your level of support for the following. More parks in new neighborhoods, more access and parking at local parks, more sidewalks or sidewalks on both sides of the street. And we've heard this one a lot, more connections with Forest Service trails. Then increase walkability with more paths and trails between neighborhoods. So a lot of support for those increased paths and connections between neighborhoods and connecting with the Forest Service. And also sidewalks on both sides of the street. All right. So I hope that was fun. We really appreciated everyone participating. We got some really good insight there, and had 53 plus responses on some of those. So that really does help us understand, your vision for the community. We really would like you to stay connected on whatsupwoodlandpark.com. On there, you can sign up for a stakeholder interview if you want to talk via Zoom about specific ideas or thoughts. I've talked with many of you already, but always love to hear more. And then we have, like I mentioned before, surveys coming out about once a month, really digging into more specific things. And updates on where we are with the plan and the next opportunity to get engaged. So yeah, I think we'll move it over to question and answers now. Yes.
Just kind of a small sample size. It's a great, I think it's a great survey. Are you have any movement to put this on the website and the rest of the community participate in this? Large size?
Yeah, we have a little over 200 folks online answering the other survey questions, and they get into a little bit more meat in each topic. We're always looking for more. We advertise for this event pretty heavily, and we do have quite a few people online. So, but we are always looking to hear from more. So please tell your friends, let everyone know. We'd like to hear from you. Yeah.
We did have a greater fidelity and breakout of how votes were cast, considering almost 30% of votes were not Woodland Park citizens. 29%. Were not.
We're not residents inside the city limits.
So are you now recording or doing that surveys to say, are you resident or non-resident, do the same thing so that you kind of know what the residents are thinking?
That's a great question. Yeah, in the surveys online, and I believe in this survey, but I will double check, it does, follows where people live and the rest of the questions. So you can filter out, and look at different demographics. So you can see what people, under 40 said, you can see what people inside the city limits said, and be able to understand the results that way.
Hey, Christy. We cannot hear on Zoom. We cannot hear when people ask questions. Can you repeat them?
Thanks, Olivia.
Thanks.
Yeah, the most recent question was, can we segment responses by those who live inside the city limits and those who don't live inside the city limits? And so the answer is through the survey tool we can, and we will be looking at it that way too.
Great. We have a Zoom question as well.
All right, do you want to tell us the Zoom question, Olivia?
It says, will these sidewalks include Innovation Parkway with streetlights too?
The question is, will these sidewalks include Innovation Parkway?
Eventually.
We'll have multiple answers.
So Innovation Parkway is on the Sturman property, and it's actually Sturman Parkway. It's mislabeled in the assessor's map. And yes, eventually there is a bike path and that will serve similar to the Centennial Trail that we would love to see, that would connect Trout Creek Road to Meadowood Park. So Sturman Parkway is definitely on the Parks, Trails, and Open Space Master Plan for a bikeway or a trail.
Yes, in the back.
Is this survey being sent out to the young people in our community, like the high school kids, middle school kids?
Yeah, that's a great question. I got to engage with the high school kids. Thank you. It was a great question about if this survey is asking younger demographics, and we did engage with the civics class at the high school and had a series of exercises with them to learn a little bit more about what they would like to see, and they give us some really innovative thoughts. So yeah, those will be incorporated.
similar focus on disabled folks in town. Have you contacted them to see what they need in the way of ADA plans?
A question about if we have reached out to ADA or to disabled or you know, folks with difficulty moving around to ask what types of ADA improvements they would like to see. And we have not yet, but I would like to. If you have any thoughts of how a specific group that we could reach out to, that would be great. Olivia, are there any other questions online?
I'm not seeing any for now. Oh, yep, we just got one. Is there an idea of how much it will cost to maintain new trails?
The question is there an idea of how much it would cost to maintain new trails?
Very practical question.
Our Public Works Department is putting together a capital improvement program and an asset management program. And within those plans, they will identify the costs for maintaining. But at this point, I don't have a number off the top of my head.
Any other questions from the audience?
We're consuming water. We're good for another quarter or third. What happens as we start to approach the top of that?
So the question was regarding water and taps. There is about a third of the total cap available, and wondering what happens when we near the top of that level.
Yes. That is a really, really important question for this community. We have approximately 1,100 taps remaining to grow into. And what we have done since the tap management plan was put in place in the mid-90s is we have kept track of our vacant lots and trying to correlate the water and the amount of vacant land so that we do not annex new properties that we can't serve or increase densities in a large way that we could not serve. So we're hoping that in 20 or 30 years from now, and that depends upon how many multifamily projects come in versus single family projects, or some commercial land is converted into residential, because we base our water projections totally on residential units. That includes the commercial use, the public use, as well as a cushion to buffer us from droughts and other times. So depending upon how each year grows, I'm hoping that we'll have a good solid 20 to 30 years more of growth. Now, when a community stops growing, what you usually see is more redevelopment and infill. So many of the older homes or older buildings in town, maybe which already has an existing tap, water tap to it, then becomes a tear down and a redevelopment. So it's a very, very good question that this community needs to wrestle with as we maximize the water. And some of you are probably thinking, well, why don't we purchase more water? Well, the availability of water shares is very limited and very, very expensive. And right now we get most of our usable or consumptive water from the ground, from wells that are out by the golf course. And the city can only draw so much out of the ground that is adjudicated or rightfully used by the city. We have very junior water rights, and luckily we had some very smart people back in the 1960s and 70s that did acquire water and transmission lines or agreements with the city of Colorado Springs, because we also have to, whatever we draw out of the ground and consume, we have to put back into the stream. And that's called augmentation water. So that's why it is so expensive, because our augmentation water comes from the Continental Divide or a trans-basin source. And we just purchased, I think, was it 1.5 shares or a share of water, which is usually an acre foot. And an acre foot is 43,560 square feet of surface, 1 foot deep. That's an acre foot. So the price that we're paying for a share, an acre foot of water from Twin Lakes, the trans-basin water, is over $40,000. And that will only...
Is that per year?
No, that's a one time, but we per share. But then we do have annual transmission costs through the home stake line from Twin Lakes to Woodland Park. So water is a very interesting and complex, but we're very fortunate that some people made good decisions in the past and provided that leadership for the community, and those folks also at that time set up the zoning and the subdivision regulations so that we would grow in a very managed and orderly fashion. Yes.
I think this is appropriate in the current discussion. Have there been any plans for the long-term development as we discussed in the past for a future reservoir around on the north side of the city, where there's been planning for that for some time? Where does that stand?
So the question from Ken Matthews is about an additional reservoir in Woodland Park. And we have been working with the Boy Scouts of America, who own property up Loy Gulch, which is up off of Rampart Range. And right now we are working on the agreements to be able to move forward with the reservoir. The good news is that our utilities director, Kip Wiley, has been socking away funds so that we can hopefully pay for most of this reservoir when we're ready to be able to build a dam and a reservoir. So it's very important that we get additional storage supply in Woodland Park, and that will basically help us weather the droughts.
I read in the paper that they're doing an upgrade on our water treatment here in the city. How does that fit in with the future growth of, like how much area could we annex? And would our plant be able to handle the water from that?
So the question is about the water treatment plant and its capacity to handle growth and whether annexation would be in the future of Woodland Park. So the treatment plant was upgraded about 20 years ago. and some of the council members might be able to help me with this. I know that Kip Wiley does have in the future an upgrade to it again in order to be able to treat the water and that we're pulling out of the ground and mixing augmentation water into. So there is a plan to improve the water treatment plant. And I can't remember, is it 1,000,000 gallons a day that it can cycle through right now? And generally our usage is somewhere in 700,000 a day. Does that sound about right, Rusty? Okay. And then, so our annexation policy is not to annex new residential properties. If there is commercial property that makes sense, because commercial property has greater value in property tax or sales tax to the community, then we will look at that more closely. Right. So I should mention the utilities director does an annual reconciliation plan. And this is a tremendous tool that looks at the past in terms of what our revenues were and what the expenses were. And then it looks into the future and projects what those water needs are going to be, as well as the capital improvements. And the utilities department tries to keep that balanced so that we are going to be able to afford the improvements and have enough revenue come in. Because the other big question about when we stop growing is how will this community be able to pay for maintenance and upkeep of the infrastructure? Because we no longer have the addiction to growth to be able to pay for that. So it's a really important question.
We may have a couple of questions on Zoom.
Yeah, we're getting a few Zoom questions. Do you want me to read them?
Yes, please.
Okay, so first we have, is there a list of projects by priority and implementation times?
The first question is there a list of projects with priority and implementation times? And that was a feature in the previous comprehensive plan. And we intend that that will be a feature in this comprehensive plan as well.
Awesome. Okay, so the next question is, will there come a point that we encourage builders who will construct 1,500 to 1,900 square foot homes on quarter to half acre lots that are affordable? Affordable being 300 to 400,000. Not all people want to or can live in Woodland Park.
So the next question is pretty long, but it sums up to housing attainability and ensuring that smaller, less expensive homes are available and promoting that. I don't know if you have a thought. I do.
The city council just adopted a new policy or regulation in the zoning regs that has basically eliminated small single family homes within multifamily or high density areas. But what we do have is the ability to have attached units, whether it's duplexes or apartments that can be built in multifamily homes. But as far as more affordable single family, unfortunately, we don't have that option at this time. And maybe something that we reconsider in the future. But at this time, the direction by the policymakers is to move toward large lot, large homes, large single family, less affordable unless they are attached.
Great. This question is kind of related to that one. So for multifamily development, does each new unit take one tap? Or is it less?
Question is, does a multifamily unit take one tap? So if it is an apartment complex, that is a commercial tap, but we allocate the number of units toward our growth build out. It gets a little complicated because if it is a townhome, then those units all do purchase one tap. And condominiums also purchase a tap per unit. But we do track all units based on population and households in order to incorporate that into the water usage and the build out numbers.
Olivia, is there another question?
No more questions for now from Zoom.
All right, thank you Zoomers for staying with us and for asking such great questions. Anyone else in this room who has a question or thought? Yeah.
I was just curious, the subcommittees that were noted earlier, I believe they looked at them well. What access does the public have to the work that the subcommittees do? And how can you find out what each of those subcommittees is tasked with analyzing in terms of the planning?
That's a great question. It was about how do we find out a little bit more about what those subcommittees are looking at, what the information that they have, and what discussions are they having. And those subcommittees are really brainstorming. We gave them the existing plan and asked them to mark it up. We said, take all the knowledge that you have, and we have on every subcommittee planning commissioner, city council person, and city staff, as well as other members of the public. So we have a great representation of and knowledge base. And then we ask them to just look at it and let us know, what are your thoughts on each of the existing plans, objectives, and actions? Are these out of date? Do we need some new ones? What do we need to look at? We're going to be giving them a little bit more background information before our next meeting, and that same information will be posted on the website. It'll be a fact sheet that looks at, what are the existing conditions and trends. Yeah.
In follow-up to his question, it's great you're giving him more background, but I thought I heard him say, how can we find out more about the brainstorming, about what they're concluding, what their reports and their findings are. So there's some cross sharing between subcommittees, and I would suggest in the community, in the formative stage.
It was a follow-up question asking a little bit more about how is the brainstorming sessions and notes shared with the community so that the community can see a little bit more about what each subcommittee is coming up with. We don't have a format for specifically sharing notes and those sorts of things right now, but we can talk internally about different ways that those might be shared. Great. I know earlier there was a question in the back. Yeah.
Curious, how many are on Zoom?
Oh, great question. 30.
And follow-up, for those, and there are people in this community who do not have access to a website, how are you getting that information out to the residents? How can they participate?
Yeah, we posted flyers around town and notified different organizations around town for this event. But as we move forward in the plan, we're going to look at which neighborhoods we're hearing from and which ones we're not hearing from, and specifically target those groups so we make sure we get a good representation from the city.
How will you target those groups?
We haven't come up with a plan yet. We were looking to see what was going to happen. But, you know, specific mailers to neighborhoods within those areas that we're not hearing from and specific questions on those is one option. Yeah.
In the old days, about 10 years ago, we had a community survey, and it was sent out by mail. And for every response, you had $10 that would be donated to your favorite charity. And we had almost 2,000 respondents. So if you're looking for big numbers, that would be one thing to consider.
Okay, great. The note for those on Zoom was that in 2010, in the last comprehensive plan update, a survey was sent to every address in the city with $10 donated to charitable organization for each survey respondent, and that it had overwhelming response. So that's great to know.
So it wasn't the community plan, comprehensive plan. It was with regard to what amenities do we people in that, like big trails, ice skating rinks, or bike centers, whatever.
I apologize. I misheard the question. It was not, the survey was not for the comprehensive plan, but for a different understanding of desired community amenities.
I think part of your question, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think he was inquiring about what the aid group subcommittees were, what their mission were, what they were trying to accomplish, and how maybe someone might be able to read that, see if they have an interest in that, and maybe join or participate. Am I correct, sir? Yeah, I thought so. So if you,
Okay.
yeah. Absolutely. So if you can share with him where he can find those subcommittees, what their goals and missions are in subject matter, and how maybe they can give us. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for clarifying and expanding. The question was a little bit more about what the subcommittee's goals and objectives are, and a little bit more about, where they're getting
The subjects and what they're looking at.
their subjects and what they're looking at. The subcommittees are currently full. Right now they're meeting in small groups, so there isn't room for any additional engagement at this time. The subcommittee's goals are to review the existing plan and to identify any gaps and any things that have been completed and any new actions that are needed. And so that's their ultimate goal, is to review that and make comment and contribute.
Christy, each of the subcommittees has a scribe. Unfortunately, we have one subcommittee. So where are those notes going to be posted? I think those would be of interest to the community.
Yeah, so the comment was about each subcommittee does have a scribe that takes notes, and we're getting notes in various formats, but we can make those notes available to the community on the website.
And we've also determined that if there is a meeting outside of the cycle of those that we've already scheduled, those will be posted by the city and the location of those meetings. I would not say categorically that other observers couldn't come to those subcommittee meetings.
Great point. Yeah, so the comment too was that any subcommittee meetings that happen outside of the regularly scheduled subcommittee meetings, the location and date and time are posted as part of a public awareness that those subcommittees are meeting. And that if somebody was interested in observing those meetings, that they could.
And I would suggest they could observe any of them subcommittee meetings.
And yes, observe any of the subcommittee meetings. Thank you. Yeah.
One of the things we did under the subcommittee was you listed all the various goals and objectives from the existing plan, and we were supposed to say met or marginal or not met, that type of thing. And there was room for comments right there. And I think those comments would be very, very good for people to be able to see as to what's kind of thinking is going on in this.
Yeah, that was another great comment about subcommittee meetings. And as part of the subcommittees, we've asked them to do a plan audit online. And each goals, objectives, and action within the existing plan, everyone in the subcommittee was asked if that goal, objective, and action should be kept, dropped, or refined, and side notes addressing those, and that those can be made available to the public as well, to be able to see those comments that are being made on the existing plan. Any other questions online, Olivia?
No, we did get a comment that says that building material costs are going up, and that rising cost of building materials will cause housing prices to go up.
Yeah, so on Zoom, it was just another comment about the fact that building materials prices are going up across the country, and that those do impact the cost of building new housing.
Oh, and we got a comment that says we should say the plan audit result is due.
Yes, and for anyone on the subcommittee, the plan audit results are due on the 21st.
Now everybody knows. They're held accountable.
Great, well, thank you all for your great questions and your great engagement. We really appreciate your time, and all of the comments and suggestions that you've made tonight will be carried forward. If you'd like to talk with any of us afterwards, please, come up and we'll chat. If you'd like a snack, please help yourself. There's also some informative maps and different diagrams along the side of the room if you're interested in the current zoning, the current detention areas, or the reliever route. And thank you very much.